already put in that result. So we're talking back history of at least, 10, 20 years. Even as of 2007, he's still purposefully misleading people to try to give it not quite of the exact word, and it's almost a lawyer writing the text where he say, well, the relationship is very complicated, but of all the fact that is most important, you only have to remember this. When there is more CO2, there's more temperature. Even the order or the arrangement of the word. It's not saying there's more temperature, there's more CO2.
I don't understand what you're saying. I'm
no,
clear.
He was trying to suggest that changes of the CO2 is causing the temperature to change in the ice core data results. But the fact that it's been known for about 22 years now in the ice core community plus today's community is that for that data set, we know that you could never show that it's the atmospheric carbon dioxide that is causing the temperature to change. In fact, it's the reverse, right? It's always the temperature that is changing first, and then the Earth system responds so that it allows more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere or less carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Depends on how warm or how cold the temperature is, or how warm or how wet or how dry the Earth system is. Okay? You understand? He's actually switched the causality around. He tried to ask people to try to ignore this cause and effect picture that has been known. And then he tried to quickly go over that, because the reason why he keeps using that graph, I believe, is because graphically it's very impressive.
That's what I was going to say. It's hypnotizing.
Very impressive. And then plus that the last scene where he flew up, of course, saying the CO2 level is so high now, it's even more dramatic, right? I mean, but of all this, all I wanted to say is that he knew all this fact too. He knew about this. When I remember one or two times he was asked about that, he said, wow, we know all about that. We never say that it's the carbon dioxide that's causing the temperature to change. All we're saying is that the carbon dioxide is just an amplifier to the system, in the sense that when you started to warm, so you bring more carbon dioxide out, then the carbon dioxide sort of help it to make it even warmer. That's a very interesting admission, by the way. He did admit that to that point, but very rarely known. I even go as far as checking and entertaining that idea to see whether it's right or wrong. And I've written a paper in 2007 that is close to 50 pages, which is very long for scientific standard. I'm not so long-winded, by the way. I just write very detailed, very exactly. And I couldn't support that statement too. So, I don't know what else is left in terms of the integrity of the process or the actual understanding of this relationship between CO2 and temperature. And worse yet, a person like the producer of his movie, Laurie David, do you know that person?
Yes, I know of her.
Yes. She actually, after the success of The Inconvenient Truth, I presume that she also won a trophy for herself. So she actually wrote a book called A Guide to Global Warming, a special guide to global warming. And those book was said to be targeting children 8 years and older, okay? To try to target the school children, and then collaborating with another person by the name of Cumbria Gordon. They were so unlucky or lucky, depends on how you see this. The first day the book came out, I roughly remember, is September 1st, I remember, of 2007. I was at a bookstore with my son, which is about 3 years old at that time. But I, of course, knew that it's coming out, but then I just so happened to be in bookstore that day, and that day it came out, so I saw the book. Okay, I opened it, I looked. I didn't flip more than 16 pages, and I saw one already. It's the same stuff again. It's the same stuff of this carbon dioxide and temperature curve. And, of course, in that writing, they were specifically trying to say that CO2 is an air pollutant that is, we human emit. Of course, forgot to say that, 650,000 years ago, there couldn't possibly be a SUV there. And then they was trying to say, well, look at this graph. You just have to do this flip page to see how close the relationship between CO2 and temperature is. With the suggestion, of course, that more CO2 means temperature warming. And if you look carefully in the graph, something totally damaging for them that is happening. I saw that graph, of course. It's actually showing two curves. One is orange curve, one is blue curve. The essential point is that in the label, they say the orange curve, let's say, is the carbon dioxide, and then the blue curve is the temperature. They plot it in such a way that they show that the orange curve actually is changing first, and then the blue curve, the temperature response. Okay? You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
They are actually saying that carbon dioxide is causing all the temperature to changes, okay, over 650,000 years. And then, remember what I just told you, we know this stuff about temperature causing the CO2 to change at least 20 years ago when the result first came out for 160,000 years, and then in 1999 we extended to 420,000 years, and then in 2005 we extended to about 650,000 years. And it turns out that they actually switched the graph, the curve, to try to make the CO2, the actual temperature curve is turned into CO2, and then the actually CO2 curve is turned into temperature. When I saw this, I called my friend, I say, Bob, do you want to pay for this book? Because I could not buy this book, with principal. It's $20, but I refuse to pay it. If you want to do it, I'll write a 2-page report for you. Something very bad in this book, I say. And remember, they're targeting children. So I'm doubly not happy with this because they switched the graph. And then I wrote the report up by showing, of course, that this is completely opposite, they are wrong. And then what we did is that we didn't make a noise. I first wrote a letter to the chief scientist of the British Antarctic Survey, who actually claimed was acknowledged by Laurie David to be helping her. I told him about this fact. His name is Eric Wolf. And I said, Dr. Wolf, here's the situation, would you come out and say that, that's wrong, and then please tell her to correct this. And then I also wrote to Peter Robinson, which is the president of Scholastic that published the book, #1 children book scholar, right, publisher. Guess what the response is? Both sides refuse to even stand up for this untruth. Eric Wolf was more cordial by saying, she's after all not a scientist, so on. But I say your name is being used here to say that you supply the data, okay? And then the Peter Robinson one is even more aggressive. They say essentially saying you're some kind of right-wing conspiracy trying to destroy and attack Laurie David. Remember, this person trying to write a book and misled children and then saying that we are attacking her. She's the one that switched the graph. And then guess what? A month later, they actually hire another person, a Princeton professor. The name is Michael Oppenheimer. He's actually a very good chemist before. By the way, by coincidence, he also came to my center, Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics in the 70s when he was doing science then. But this person, Michael Oppenheimer, was also the former chief scientist for environmental defense, as you know. It's the group that is very, very, in a sense that politics is a lot more important than science for that group. So this Michael Oppenheimer now have a position of professorship at Princeton, who essentially wrote a letter like this. Essentially say, we have checked these things, I have checked these things, and they are correct. Essentially that the curve has been switched. Okay, so guess who's right on this? We're right? That they have switched the graph. But what makes me really angry about that letter was to say this. But, here's the big but. The but is the worst but that I can see in the history of this kind of communication. Still trying to twist around, but he said, the language and the text that is used, by the way, is very precise to say that CO2 and then temperature, that kind of thing. You can read in detail that books. And then they say, but the language used is all correct to the level in which it should be understandable by children 8 years or older. What that implies to me is, I take it is to say that, well, I can sell you a false product, and then even if you have an error, you should be able to correct it for yourself. Okay? The reason why I wrote to Peter, would you retract all these books and then pay, basically, don't send this book out until you really have it correct and then send it out, right? They refuse to do that. And they send this person I don't know whether they pay him or not, but that's what it is. He come back and say, wow, everything you say is correct, but children should be able to correct it for themselves.
I'm so sad.
It's amazing. And look at this. This is a small, tiny little incident that I bet that no more than 1,000 people heard me before, but I will keep saying until the day I die because this is the true fact. I have all those letters, but no one wants to hear it. Laurie David, when he first heard about this, she was very angry, of course. Actually, she did even post something on the Huffington Post saying essentially this is the right-wing conspiracy after her, But it's unbelievable. This is the kind of approach that they are this is their approach towards truth, and then they expect people to stand up and agree with this. And I was very doubly saddened, especially the chief scientist of British Antarctic Survey, a person of considerable stature, in my opinion. And I sort of know his work and admire his work, and I wrote to him nicely, and they would not stand up. This is where the money gravy train is very, very important, okay? that the result coming from Antarctica has